On March 5, 1994, Jose Escamilla videotaped 16 minutes of UFO footage in broad daylight, 9 miles south of Roswell, New Mexico. He thought this would be the only UFO encounter he and his family would ever have. 14 days later, he captured something on videotape that would forever change his life. He discovered something flying in the skies that just didn't look normal. At first, he thought they were insects flying close to the video camera. After a number of tests, he found out they were not insects. He found out they were not birds. Instead, he discovered something that will forever change the way we accept reality. They are called rods.
First, I was kind of reluctant to release information on rods because, as you saw there, I thought they were 100 feet long, and we just didn't know enough about this phenomenon. I'd never experienced it before. I mean, the UFO object, you see a disc shape, all right, that's, conforms with the, most of the sightings that have occurred over the last 50 years, but rods were a total different thing. They look like flying snakes, and we now have absolute evidence that these things are real because now we've got insects and birds shot at that shutter setting, and now we have rods, and there's a difference because we now have solid evidence of these things, and we're starting to see a familiarity in the way their flight characteristics are. I mean, they definitely have a certain flight characteristic. They don't fly through the air, they swim through the air, and that's a different characteristic than I'd seen before. And they're swimming. I mean, they're going just as fast as fish. That's why I call them skyfish, because they're deliberate in their motion.
It's a vertical pit. It has a sloped bottom. It is so immense that you can literally take the Empire State Building and set it inside this pit, and no part of the Empire State Building would touch any of its sides. And just as they leap off of towers and buildings and bridges and things like that, base jumpers are now leaping off the lip of the cave as sport.
When I first got there for the first time in 1999, I was expecting to see rods zipping by, but in slow motion. Now, what this shows is the agility and the speed in which swallows can fly. As you can see here, the base jumper is probably reaching terminal velocity, which is close to 90 to 100 miles an hour, and the swallow is able to go from 0 to 90 practically within 4 or 5 seconds. So this is a very fast and agile bird. Now, the next sequence is the full sequence where the swallow chases after a rod.
Now, why this shot is important is that, well, for one thing, we actually show a bird and a rod flying side by side. So obviously the rod is not a misfilmed bird.
Then I started remembering and recalling how fast these things are. I mean, they're like bam, bam, zipping right by me. And here, right about here, is where the rod senses it's being chased and where the swallow takes a dive at the rod, and here you see them both on the run.
But here we have a rod that actually changes its flight path and is actually able to outfly, outmaneuver, and out-accelerate the swallow. What we want to show you now are some of the specific video clips that we show the best evidence for rods, showing it as being a unique phenomena and not just a blurred insect or bird. And in particular in showing the speed in which they travel and some of their flight dynamics, which are not shared with bugs or birds, which again is more evidence for my hypothesis of what we're dealing with here is a creature that's unique on this planet. It doesn't fly like any other creature, doesn't fly like insects, doesn't fly like birds, and has a unique physiology and physical structure unlike anything else we see. Another shot that we have from the cave in Mexico is where the rod is actually entering the shadow of the cave. Now, why this is important is that we have the base jumper in the background, and so we have him as one of our reference points. We know that he's approximately 6 foot in height. We know that his speed is going to be right around terminal velocity, so anywhere between like 90 and maybe 120 miles an hour. And at the same token, this was taken in the afternoon, and we have a shadow that's being cast by the leading edge of the cave that's on the leading edge that's closest to the sun. And the shadow is leaving a line across the back wall of the cave, so you can clearly see the angle of the shadow falling through the mouth of the cave. Now, the base jumper is in, like I said, kind of in the rear 2/3 of the cave from the point of the videographer, where you can see about 3/4 of the rod is in shadow, and just the last little section of it is still remaining in the sunlight. And if that was motion blur, you would not be able to get that effect. You would get a streaking effect out of it. So what we see is basically, we know we have a snapshot of a cylindrical shaped animal in this case. And again, we also have the base jumper in the background. He's not unusually blurred, and we know that he's traveling at a high rate of speed also. Bruce Maccabee was able to make some calculations off of this, and his rough calculations were able to give us an approximation to the size of this rod. And we feel in this particular shot that on the small end the rod was maybe 2 feet in length, and on the large end it could have been easily 4 feet in length.
I've seen the evidence. I've talked to several people that have been involved with rods, and I think it belongs in this study. The UFO mystery is broad. There are a lot of things causing UFO sighting reports. Rods is probably one of them. The evidence I've seen is kind of overwhelming. You get video after video after video of very strange things flying around in our air, some of them very rapidly, some of them large, some of them small. We're dealing with a mystery that's part of the science of studying these things, and rods are important to us as a result.